Hey everybody, welcome back to Free Thinking with Montel. I'm your host, Montel Williams, and today we're exploring what it really takes to achieve success, grow personally, and most importantly, become the captain of your own ship with the author of the new book, Captains Wanted. Joining me is Andres Schabelman, whose life story is nothing short of extraordinary. From being one of the first 30 employees at Airbnb to ringing the bell at the New York Stock Exchange with Fiverr. Andres knows a thing or two about success, I'm telling you, but he's also someone who's reevaluated what success really means along his personal and professional journeys. Andres, thank you so much for being a part of Free Thinking with Montel today, sir. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Look, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, your heritage, where you came up from, where you grew up at? Let's start there first before we talk about the book.
I like that. Yeah, I grew up in New Orleans. My parents are from Argentina. My great-grandparents came from Ukraine and Moldova region. They were Jewish immigrants to Argentina. And I grew up in New Orleans around a Colombian Catholic community. And so I had a lot of different worlds that I weaved in and weaved out of, and developed a real sense of being able to belong anywhere you put me. And that served me as I've traveled around the world and had different experiences, opening up different markets for different businesses and living in a bunch of different places.
Well, let's talk about some of those businesses that you started working with early on before you really got to Airbnb and others. Let's go back. I mean, I really want to know a little bit more about where'd you go to college, was your degree in, those kinds of things.
Yeah, so I went to Williams College. I went to Harvard's Kennedy School of Government and got a master's in public policy. I was the good Jewish son, achieving all the things they wanted me to achieve, and living the immigrant dream of like making it happen in America. And in one of those, after I graduated from the Kennedy School, one of my best friends was diagnosed with a terminal illness. I went and stayed with him for the last 4 months of his life. His last words were, "I am the captain of this ship," which is what the book is named after. And in a moment of just being lost, I tunnel vision got a job at Google in San Francisco. It was not ideal, but in that process, I met the folks from Airbnb in the early stages, became one of the first 30 Airbnb employees. With my language skills, I think you also speak Chinese and I speak Spanish. I expanded the company to different markets, and reached an incredible amount of success within the tech world, but was feeling quite empty at the end of that process.
Wow. Okay. And that's what led you to writing the book. But let me talk a little bit more about were you were in the C-suite of Airbnb, or were you just an employee of Airbnb?
Yeah, I mean, in the early days, we didn't really have like the concept of the C-suite because we were all just doing everything. I came in at a time where we had a copycat business called Wimdu. These German brothers called the Sammer brothers made a whole business model around copying U.S. Unicorn businesses to then force those businesses to buy them. And we didn't want to do that. So we started a full international expansion campaign trying to squash out this copycat. And I arrived at Airbnb right at that time. And because of my ability to be in different markets and in different countries, on the second day on the job, I was already in Germany. And that sort of started off a real career and niche in the tech world for being able to expand businesses in new markets, but do so in a way that maintained the company culture in a cohesive way.
Gotcha. You did the same thing for Fiverr, I assume?
I did the same thing at Fiverr. I opened up 2 markets for them right before we went public, and I got to be on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange when we rang the bell. And and it was sort of like a great example of like a place where I felt like I had reached the pinnacle of success. I was at the pinnacle, literally, of capitalism inside of the New York Stock Exchange. I had done all the things that were expected of me, and it wasn't it.
Wasn't enough.
there was a longing that my heart really felt like there was something else.
That's what brings us to your book, Captains Wanted, which I guess caused quite a stir. And one of the things that stands out is your choice to write it in second person with genderless pronouns. Let's start there. And why did you pick this technique?
Yeah. Well, first of all, my whole upbringing and process of success was one where I was not really fully listening to my internal compass. I'd given away a lot of power to different expectations, cultural norms, societal needs, expectations, all those things. And so I'm keenly aware of the places where I give away my own power to others. And I wanted to write a book, but not one where I, as the author, was then creating separation with the reader, where they were then using that hierarchical difference between author and reader to then let go of their own experience and then think of me as some sort of expert. Because at the end of the day, I really believe that you're your own expert and you're your own captain of your own ship. So who am I to tell you how to live your life and to become the captain? I can only maybe give you an experience that then has you figure it out for yourself. So I wanted people to be the main character of their own journey. And that was the intent behind that choice, both the genderless pronouns and the second person.
And how much of your time at Airbnb and Harvard, let's say, and even moments at the New York Stock Exchange helped to inform your story?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the character's journey starts off with an interview essentially at Google, where the main character gives a fake, not a fake, but an answer that is what's expected of him. And rather than really think about it deeply and think about it from a heart place, he kind of just regurgitates what's expected. And so, yeah, I think that character's journey to then find signals and symbols to then, come out the other side, really having a sense of discernment and freedom, true freedom, is definitely inspired by my own journey out of the matrix or out of the system of expectations.
Certainly. I often live by the motto, I will never live down to anybody else's expectations of myself, only up to my own. And that seems kind of like what you've really kind of lived through in your whole life. I mean, your career's had some incredible highs, but you've faced some really harrowing times. I mean, you've been held captive by guerrillas. You've even been drugged and robbed in Colombia. Do those experiences shape the challenges your character faces in the book?
Yeah, the drugging and robbing that happened to me in Colombia happened right in the middle as I was writing the book. And it was a great reminder that I myself hadn't fully embodied and learned all the lessons that I am still in the process of learning.
Tell me the story. Slow down a little bit and tell the story.
Yeah, so in January of 2022, I had just visited my best friend and his mom, who's got Alzheimer's, and he's in a full-time caretaker mode. And I think I was in a lot of pain from that experience, seeing my friend and his mom in their situation. And I turned to some very familiar, numbing places. I got on the dating apps. I was looking to meet a woman on Bumble. She was a nomad like me, into crypto, and we ended up meeting up. And then probably by 9:30, I'm completely out. There had been some red flags, but I just stayed on the path. There was some sort of inertia that was pulling me to go through with this experience. And about, 20 to 25 hours later, I woke up in my hotel room and everything was gone. My phone was gone. And then as I did more investigation, it turns out they had given me this drug that it's called scopolamine or burundanga on the street, and it makes you this like zombie where you're very suggestive to whatever your attackers want you to do. So, for example, they had me give them all of my crypto passwords, and they stole an incredible amount of money. But, you know, all of these moments, it was an incredible opportunity to learn the lesson of like how to take care of my emotions, how to come back to myself in difficult moments. And I think at that time I had been over-identifying with the money. I had been thinking that somehow that made me more special, but it was really just like kind of glossing over some real deep self-worth wounds, some real deep self-worth wounds that I still had, that I thought I had been, on the other side of, that I had worked through, that I had overcome, but I hadn't. And so I went back into the book as I was writing it and made sure that that the character's journey to sovereignty or discernment wasn't a linear one. Like, we keep returning back sometimes to these lessons related to our like core wounds. And so that was an example of how I hadn't actually fully worked through it all. And I think that's helpful because sometimes it's frustrating for us to return back to some of the difficult things that we're going through, but knowing that, we're still on a journey, and we are on a different part of that spiral where we are actually truly moving forward, but sometimes the process of moving forward doesn't feel that way. And I needed to learn those lessons, and it was really valuable. And never once have I thought about the money or have I had anger towards my attackers. It really was an incredible opportunity for me to learn some important lessons. And
did you get it? I understand you didn't have any animosity or anger towards them, but did you get justice out of this or no? Justice in the sense that they were caught or they weren't never caught?
So I employed a crypto forensics company to help me track where the transactions had gone. None of that helped me get my money back, nor will it ever. And I knew that going into it. But Interpol got involved and used my report that I created along with the Colombian police. And just a month ago, almost 3 years afterwards, they sent me a confirmation that they had caught the 3 attackers, that were involved in the criminal ring. The woman that night they'd sent me a picture of, but I wasn't 100% sure it was her. So I think that she's still at large. So I did help a sort of process of justice come about. Yes.
And here, this is a tough one, but if you wanted to give somebody advice about how to avoid being in that situation, were there any red flags now that you look back at it in hindsight, or was there anything you could have done to maybe not have this happen? Of course, not having even had the date would have been one of those things. However, I'm just talking about when the date began, when you started talking to her. Did she throw up any red flags that you look at in hindsight and understand that this was a scam to begin with?
Oh yeah, there were so many red flags, Montel, and I truly, I know that, especially us men, but I think across all of our society, we have a hard time dealing with hard emotions. And oftentimes those hard emotions live in our body, but our mind can somehow, in an attempt to kind of soothe us and move through those feelings, we can ignore what's actually happening underneath the surface. And so I think my advice is for folks to take on a somatic practice, a practice of working with their body and in therapy, so that they can be aware when there's an emotion that's hanging out underneath the surface that isn't being paid attention to, so that it can flow through you rather than going into this like numbing place. Because I went into that numbing place and I ignored all the red flags because I really didn't want to feel the pain that was actually underneath the surface. And I think like as a society, we could do a lot better in working towards tolerating our own pain, because at the end of the day, what I experienced by ignoring my pain was even more pain.
Gotcha.
I think we often think so much that like ignoring and numbing is more comfortable somehow than the actual pain itself. And I think there's a lot of discomfort and pain that actually is happening when we're numbing.
Got it. Well, one of the unique aspects of Captain's Wanted is how it integrates plant-based medicines and psychedelics into, the protagonist's self-discovery. What role do these play in the story and in your own life?
Yeah, I think they're twofold. One is sometimes we can feel overwhelmed by how far away we are from where our ultimate place that we're going to, which is unity, connection, coming together, seeing our similarities, the oneness. And I think because we can feel so separate from that, sometimes we can give up on our process of growth. And I think plant medicine does a really good job of connecting you in your body to the experience of feeling in connection to the universe, to humanity, to nature, in a way that makes it so that when you go back into your normal life, you have something to work towards. You know that unity exists because you had that experience in the ceremony. So that's one way that I think plant medicine has really helped my life. And I think the other way that plant medicine helps is the overwhelming connection that you feel with Mother Nature and nature when you're in these ceremonies makes you really put many things in your life into perspective. And it kind of makes me aware that I am an instrument in some larger system. And so it kind of like makes me feel connected to purpose and meaning on a deeper level, because if I'm connected to my heart and I'm living my life from that place of depth and meaning, then I am really an instrument in this larger system, in this larger organism, in this larger, thing that we call life. And I feel like feeling that in ceremony, once again, allows my path to become more clear, how I want to give impact in the world and how I want to keep working towards getting towards my essence and to my core, so that I can be that purest instrument and give back in the best way I possibly can.
Well, you said you were inspired to write Captain's Wanted partly by your late friend Aaron Pinsky and his words, "I am the captain of the ship." How has writing this book changed your own personal perspective on being a captain?
Wow.
Deep one, huh?
I like that one. Yeah. It's interesting because when people think about a book, it has a start and a finish, and it's packaged in a nice little container that you can then sell to folks. And as I continue to grow into my own captain, I realize that the book is just a part of my journey, but the journey continues. So I wouldn't necessarily, I think the process of using storytelling as a way to understand my own journey and to then also be of service to others is a part of my journey, and it's been a helpful part in solidifying where I've come from. And it's also set up a nice base for where I'm going. But I would just say that the process of writing a book is another key that opens up more doors into my internal world, and that serves as a base for the beautiful places that I'm going.
And what advice would you maybe give someone else who might be struggling right now to trust their own instincts and to become their own captain?
Yeah, I think you got to go slower. I think it's okay to go slower and be gentler with yourself, because I think if there's a part of you that feels like you're not there yet, maybe there's a part of you that isn't ready to be there yet.
Well, I often say to people, it's like, it's really, really hard to understand who you are and where you're going if you haven't taken a look at where you've been. And it sounds like a cliche, but unfortunately, so many people try to evaluate themselves and they don't even have the slightest understanding of who they are. I spent quite a bit of time in the military, and I was deployed on every form of platform that the U.S. military has in the Navy, and I even did some submarine duty. And one of the things I used to remember doing, the only time that you really had, because life was very busy on these ships, the only time that you really had to yourself was when you got in bed at night and you had this curtain that you could close and you'd be in this little coffin by yourself. And instead of just going right to sleep, I spent sometimes 3, 4 hours before I would doze off, just literally looking back at the earliest times in my life that I could remember. I'm telling you, I would go back to my childhood trying to remember things and why I made decisions that I did, why I reacted the way I did to things that happened around me, look at the situation to try to prevent myself from responding to say certain things and triggering certain things in my life at that time. And, I really feel it's important that people, before you can become the captain of your own ship, you got to understand that there was a keel that was laid. You have to understand that, there were ribs that were put up, and then you have to understand the sideboards and, all the things that actually help to create that ship that looks so majestic at the end. But before it can fill itself with wind, it's still, you got to understand everything that it took to build it to begin with. And so, do you think yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, what I was going to say was sometimes the way the ship was built in the early days in many ways has nothing to do with you, but it has a lot to do with the things that your parents or your caregivers were going through. And I still think that there's a core that we can go back to and almost like rebuild the walls also. But it happens like by doing what you're talking about, which is understanding where we come from and understanding the walls that were originally built may not actually be our own walls. Right. And it's been helpful for me to really go back and have those internal moments where I look at the little Andy, the little Andres, who is in Louisiana and potentially not necessarily getting the type of attention or the type of love that he necessarily wanted, then giving it to myself, and in that process learning about the things that I actually want and need in this world rather than the things that maybe other people want from me, which I would have otherwise defaulted to, but I can't get there unless I have a relationship with the past.
Right. It's so often, I look at, I joined the military and, I was one of those kind of guys, that, thought that, whatever. I had so many misconceptions of so many different people, so many different races, so many different, genders and the way people respond to gender. I literally, there was a period of time, I can remember one of my submarine trips where on several occasions I found myself crying in my sleep, before I went to sleep, because I realized how much I thought values I had established weren't even my values. They were values that I literally listened to from other people and didn't have the wherewithal at that age to literally understand that the people that taught me certain things, the people that I thought were teaching me things, the people that I thought I learned a lesson from were so dead wrong. You know what I mean? And when you do that, then that also makes you question that very basic foundation of which you were building yourself on, enough to make you go back and say, let me put some different mortar in here, because this different mortar changes the entire perspective. And too often people don't, I think, take the time to even, they may judge a group of people and don't even know why they judge a group of people, but they judge a group of people because as they grew up, everybody around them kept saying that those people. And you start to pick up that those people without realizing that that's not your view. Heck, I'll never forget sitting with a friend of mine who happened to be of a different ethnicity and realizing that, just because of the neighborhood I grew up in, the noise and din from those people around me who had judgments about that particular ethnicity, influence me without me even trying to establish my own thought. And I happened to be sitting with this friend of mine who said, I can't believe that you would say something like that. And I said, to be absolutely honest with you, I can't believe I said that either. I apologize. I'm so sorry. And because when the person said, because I happen to be that person you were talking about, I was like, holy shit. You know what I mean? What's coming out of my mouth? You know what I mean? So, yeah, it can often sometimes be, and I don't mean this in a bare way, but I think the pain of us recognizing our own faults, sometimes we try to hide from that pain. So therefore we don't even want to spend the time evaluating how wrong we might be. Can you look back at times in your life that you think may have been a moment that, you know, had you stop and adjust your course that's now shaped the path that you're on?
Yeah. The one that comes to mind is a relationship that I had in my early 30s where I didn't show up in kindness with my partner, and I was hiding a lot of things, and I was just not being who I wanted to be. But there was a moment that she gave me grace in my in my hiding and in all the ways that I was treating her in her with really lacking humanity. She gave me grace in that moment, and rather than go into the familiar pattern of being like, wow, I'm an awful person, I'm terrible, and sort of like almost like insulate myself with the negativity, but at the same time avoid the responsibility of stepping into who I knew I wanted to be, there was something about her love and grace in that moment that then allowed me in that moment to look at myself and be like, you know what? I've got some blind spots. Like a program that's running underneath the surface. And if she's able to love me in this darkness, maybe I can get to the place where I can love myself in that darkness so that I don't have to continue this process of hiding and showing up in the world in a way where I'm not fully myself, and then I need to run and cut and leave. So like that's an example of like where the gentleness and the acceptance and the love that was extended to me eventually became the blueprint for how I could extend love, graciousness, and acceptance to myself. And in that place, move forward from a place of full acceptance of all the parts of myself. And that's kind of I think for me, the key of becoming the captain of my own ship has been essentially loving and accepting every single one of my parts, even the parts that I am inclined not to show you. But I want to, because what I really truly want is to be loved in all of myself by you, but more importantly, by me.
And that's where you talk about when you mention overcoming self-doubt and the strategies that you put in effect or utilize to effectively tackle that. Talk about some of those strategies.
The strategies to tackle self-doubt.
Yes.
Yeah, I think one main strategy is, I think, becoming aware that there's essentially a boardroom in my head. There's the CEO who's been in charge for a very long time. But often my CEO that's inside of my head really actively ignores other voices in the room. He's kind of like a dictator. And I think I've become aware that there are other voices in the room that are, one of them saying, hey, I'm scared. The other one's saying, hey, I don't really believe we should be going down this path. And the dictator, the CEO, has been like, nope, we're heading down this course.
Full steam ahead.
Full steam ahead. And I think as I've started to listen to those different voices, I know I sound crazy here, but as I started to listen to these different voices, then the doubt that is underneath the surface that I'm actively ignoring becomes integrated into my actions, because those different parts of me are being incorporated into my movement forward. And so I think a lot about bringing those voices to the surface, looking at the doubt that arises from a place of true acceptance and actually curiosity about how we can listen to it better, rather than being like, no, I don't need to have this doubt. I say, no, no, no. I welcome you, doubt, because you have something really important to say, and I want to listen to you so that we can all move forward, all of us, all of our parts, so that we can move forward together in awareness of what's actually happening underneath the surface. And from that place, the self-doubt doesn't take over and run its own program.
And that's how you balance staying present with the now, planning for the future, correct?
Yeah, right. That is how you balance the now and being present and allowing. I think more so about how when you're present, when you're truly present, the path kind of reveals itself. It's not necessarily, yeah, you can have directionality, but the destination no longer becomes such a forcing function, because you understand that the destination is going to be what the destination is going to be. But the directionality is established by you being able to be present with yourself in a moment. And then, in the book, I call it cairns, like when you're on a hike and you see those rocks stacked on top of each other. Those cairns in life start to reveal themselves. So where you're moving becomes more clear.
Are there any specific mentors or experiences in your life that have been pivotal to, your own personal leadership development?
I'm in a 4-year training program to become a facilitator in something called core energetics. And it also has another another modality that's associated with it called radical aliveness. And that process has been super critical for me. Mm-hmm. Group therapy, regular therapy. In the space of, like the gurus or the thought leaders, I definitely have spent a lot of time in the Joe Dispenza world. But at the same time, like, I think it's really important for me to not put too much power in those individuals' hands, because sometimes it can create a way in which I further separate myself from my own power. So I do think it's important to learn from these people, but to then come back to your own true power. And I think sometimes in society we can get lost in the thought leaders and the people with X amount of followers, with the people who speak with such confidence out there, but aren't necessarily so connected to what your needs actually are.
If there was any, advice that you would give your younger self, what would it be? That's a toughie, right?
Well, yeah, I think it is, rather than advice, I think it would be a conversation that I would have with my younger self. And it would go like this. I see you. I know that what you're feeling is hard and difficult, and I don't need you to change what it is that you're feeling. I want you to feel what you're feeling, and while you're feeling it, I'll be here if you need me. I love you. I see you. I'm here with you, and we're going to get through this together.
Is that the one thing that you hope that readers take away from your book, Captains Needed?
I think that...
Captains Wanted. I'm so sorry. I said Captains Needed. Captains Wanted.
Sure. No problem. No, I think that the main takeaway is that you truly are the captain of your own ship. That this book is a mere blueprint for you to find your own self-power, your own freedom, your own sovereignty. You hold the key to that. I don't, you don't, no one else does but you. And I think that, I hope that Captains Wanted is an experience that people have that allows them to come back to their own source of power, because I really truly believe that from that place we care about each other and we care about the planet in deeper ways, rather than giving away power to other folks who kind of use it for their own gain and their own benefit. If we come back to ourselves and our own power and our own captaincy, we're going to all move together forward more connected and with more care for one another and the planet.
Excellent. Look, I mean, why don't you give out your stats? I mean, where can people go to get the book? And if they wanted to reach out to you, where do they go? You have a website, a couple different things?
Yeah, I would say all of my stuff right now is on Schabelmania. So it's my last name with IA at the end. And that's on Instagram. I have my comedic characters, my travel show, and stuff about the book and all about this journey to kind of come back to yourself. I would love it if people would follow me there. I'm on TikTok, also Schabelmania, YouTube Schabelmania, Schabelman.com, and the book is available everywhere, including Amazon and your local book seller.
Excellent. Well, Andres, it's clear that Captain's Wanted isn't just a book. It's an invitation to live a more fully tapped into your strength and reconnect with what truly matters. And for our listeners out there, you can, of course, grab a copy, and trust me, you won't regret it. It's one of those stories that sticks with you long after you turn the final page. So I want to thank you so much, sir, for being a part of the show today. If you ever want to come back and share some more of your wisdom, we'd love talking to you. And I know our guests are going to be excited about this conversation we had today, so I can't say thank you enough. Thank you so much for being a part of the show today.
Thank you, Montel. Thank you for all that you do.
Absolutely. And thank you for tuning in to Free Thinking with Montel. We'll catch you next time. Okay. You guys be well. And of course, before you tune out, hit that little subscribe button down there. It'll help me out a little bit. All right. Be well, be good. Take care of yourself. Love your family. See you next time. Thanks for joining me on Free Thinking with Montel. Please make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell to be notified when new episodes post each week. We'd love to hear your feedback, so please send us your comments. Military Makeover is so grateful for the support of Purple Heart Homes, a nonprofit organization that rebuilds and transforms the homes for our veterans.
Our heroes come home with sacrifices most of us can't imagine. As a veteran myself, I've been there and founded Purple Heart Homes to help.
When I tell the story of Purple Heart Homes, it's the freedom to not have to depend on somebody else to do the simple everyday things in life.
Visit phhusa.org/makeover to learn how you can help.